So I want to thank everybody for stopping in today and joining me for this Zoom seminar, Hearing Going Beyond the Technology. My name is Dr. Lia Ziemann. I'm one of the audiologists here at Geneva Hearing, and I joined this team about 5.5 years ago. Gosh, time flies. Right after graduating from University of Wisconsin-Madison. So before we get started, I just want to first introduce the rest of the team. So if you've been to our office, I'm sure some of these faces look familiar. So in the back row, we have Dr. Maria Morrison and Rich Bickbick, who opened this practice 16 years ago. And then they were joined by Amy, who is in the bottom right-hand corner as the bookkeeper to help keep us all organized. Terry joined our team about 4 years ago, and she is our patient care coordinator. I'm sure you've seen her sitting behind the desk, ready to welcome you when you walk through the doors. And then we've recently added Laura to our team as well. So if you haven't stopped in a while and you notice a new face behind the desk, feel free to say hello and welcome her to the Geneva Hearing team. Okay, so our agenda for today is a brief anatomy review, talking about technology very quickly, because our main focus today is going to be on communication and how to use communication strategies in conversation when something was missed. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so brief, like I said, brief anatomy review. Our ear has 3 parts to it. We have the outer ear, which is the part you can see, and the ear canal. This collects the sound, and when the sound waves hit our eardrum, which is the beginning of our middle ear, that movement then vibrates those 3 little bones. And that movement of those 3 little bones then activates our inner ear. More specifically, the cochlea, which is that snail shell-shaped thing you see there. And when that's activated, it sends a signal up to our brain. So the ear has to work very much like an assembly line. Everything has to come through nice and clearly in order for our brain to get the best signal possible. Now, if we take a look at our cochlea a bit more closely, inside of that shell, there are hundreds of tiny little hair cells, and each row of hair cells is responsible for transferring sound up to our brain, a specific sound up to our brain. So here you can see that the hair cells are in neat little rows. But what can happen over time is those hair cells become damaged or they completely go missing. So when this happens, the hearing loss is permanent, and sound either needs to be louder in order to activate the damaged hair cells, or that sound is completely missed because that hair cell is gone. This type of hearing loss usually happens very gradually over time. And when hearing loss is gradual, then our brain starts to normalize that new way of hearing. And then because it starts to normalize that, that's usually why most people will wait 7 to 10 years from when they first notice a change in their hearing before they actually come in to get an evaluation done. Now, 7 to 10 years is a long time for your brain to not hear sounds at a normal volume. We want to ensure that you're always hearing at your best, because we hear with our ears, but we understand with our brain. So when you come to see us at Geneva Hearing, we do a thorough diagnostic evaluation. to assess how loud sounds need to be in your environment for you to be able to hear them. But we also look at how clearly your brain can understand speech, both in quiet and in noise. So again, this is why waiting those 7 to 10 years can be risky, because if your brain is deprived of sound for too long, it doesn't always know what to make of that sound once it's loud enough again. So hearing is important for brain health and understanding, but it can also be related to other medical conditions that we need to monitor. So for example, someone who has untreated hearing loss is at a higher risk for falling. There's a likelihood that symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia will have an earlier onset. It can be linked to cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes. So we just want to help your physicians take care of you if there is hearing loss indicated, so that they know what other medical conditions to monitor for. But not only are there physical ailments that can be linked to untreated hearing loss, but there are emotional ones as well. So someone who has hearing loss can experience more fatigue. They might tire a little more quickly than they used to. They can feel tense, start to have a negative outlook on things, or become more stressed. They might get angry or irritable. Avoidance or withdrawal from social situations can also occur because they feel rejected or embarrassed by not being able to hear well. And all of these can also lead up to feeling lonely. It's also important to understand that hearing loss doesn't always only affect the person experiencing the difficulties. It also has an effect on our friends and our family. So friends and family may become frustrated that they're constantly needing to repeat themselves. They may be concerned about your safety in that, can you hear someone at the door? Can you hear the phone ring or an alarm going off? They might also misunderstand your reasoning for not wanting to come to social events or for excusing yourself from a conversation. They may interpret that as uninterest or being rude, and not because you can't hear them. It can also lead to some confusion. So if someone asks a question and you misheard it and answer incorrectly, they may be confused as to why you answered a certain way. Or if you didn't hear the entire question and only answer part of it, they might be confused as to why you didn't answer their entire question. So typically the solution for hearing loss is amplification. Now, the hearing horns have not been used for quite some time. Hearing aids have gotten a lot smaller, a lot more digital, more advanced in helping you hear the sounds in your environment a little better, which can make it easier to have conversations. But if you have hearing aids or you know someone who has them, you may notice that every once in a while, you might still need to ask someone to repeat something that they said. So the question is, why does that happen? And what else can you do to prevent that? Well, thank you for asking, because that's where we're heading next. So now we're going to talk about communication strategies. So it's important to note that these are not just for the person who is hard of hearing, but for their communication partner too. So there are things that the listener can do, and there are things that the speaker can do. Utilizing these can make communication and conversations easier for everyone. So I want you to imagine that you're playing catch with someone, but instead of tossing a ball back and forth, you're tossing your words back and forth. Now I say tossing, not shouting, but that's what a conversation is someone says something, the person has to receive it, and then they throw their words back to them. So before you have a conversation, ask yourself, is this a good time to throw a ball to someone and expect them to catch it? If the answer is yes, go ahead. If the answer is no, then we need to look at what needs to be done in order to create the best listening environment. So ways that you can be proactive in creating that type of setup would be to reduce as much background noise as possible. So turn down the television, turn down the radio in the car, turn off the sink if you're working in the kitchen, because those are all distractions that can help obscure, or not help, but can obscure the person's voice and what they're trying to say. You also want to face each other directly. So be sure that each of you has a clear line of sight to the other person and get on the same level. So if one person is sitting, maybe the other has a seat. If one person stands up, then you should stand up as well. You also want to be sure that you both have a good source of light. So the speaker should be facing the light, because if they're in front of it, then their face can be cast in shadow, making it difficult for the listener to pick up on visual cues to help enhance the conversation. Sound can also diminish the farther it has to travel. So try to be within 4 feet. I know right now we're supposed to be 6 feet away, but being within at least 4 feet away can help enhance and make it easier for you to hear the person who's speaking. If none of these work, you can also suggest moving to a quieter place where there are less noisy distractions going on around you. Okay, so this slide is more for what friends and family can do, the communication partner for the person who has hearing loss. So what you can do is get the person's attention first. Now, this can be something as simple as a light touch on the arm or a tap on the shoulder. It can even be something like adding a phrase before you ask your question. So let them know, I'm going to ask you something. These are all things that can cue the person's brain that they now need to focus on what you're saying. If you don't have their attention, they don't necessarily know that they should be listening for something. Shouting can also actually distort someone's speech. So I know in movies and everything, when someone is hard of hearing, people always shout at them. No need to do that. Just speak a little slower so that they have more time to process what you've said, or slowing down can help you to enunciate your words so that they get more speech information. Keep your hands down and away from your face. Again, we hear with our ears, but we also use visual cues to help fill in the blanks of any conversation. So the shape your mouth takes can help them determine if one word was said versus another. And going off of that, you want to try to avoid eating, drinking, or chewing gum while speaking. You also may notice that even if you have repeated yourself a few times, someone may still not quite be getting what it is that you're saying. If that's the case, then try rephrasing it. For example, someone says, I wanted to garden, but it's raining today. You say, what? I wanted to garden, but it's raining today. I'm sorry, I did not hear what you said. You could try saying, I was hoping to plant some flowers today, but I'll wait until it stops raining. Sometimes just moving the words around or adding words can help the person better understand what you're trying to share with them. And finally, understand that listening for someone with hearing loss, even with the use of hearing technology, can be a lot of hard work. So just try to be as patient as possible. Okay, so next we'll take a look at what some repair strategies are. Now, repair strategies are actions or ideas that can fix a breakdown in communication after it has already occurred. So some of these are a bit repetitive, some may be new. The main idea of a repair strategy is to let the speaker know what behavior they can change in order to help you understand. So saying something like, can you say that, a bit more slowly, letting them know they just need to slow down, telling them it helps if I can see your mouth or lips. Can you please speak a little louder? Can you face me when you're speaking? I didn't get the first part of what you said. Did you say, I want to be sure I heard correctly? Or you could ask, could you please rephrase that? So these are some phrases that you can use during a conversation to keep the conversation going, and help you participate so that you don't end up just standing there smiling and nodding and pretending like you understood, which I'm sure none of you have ever done, but just in case. Now, especially in the past year and a half, I know that keeping in touch with family and friends has been really important, whether it be with a phone call or FaceTime or Zoom. Staying in touch remotely and at a distance is important. Even if you're using a video platform like FaceTime or Zoom, if the person is not actually in front of you, communication breakdowns can still happen. More specifically over the phone in the traditional sense, because you have no visual cues to help you fill in the blanks if you missed something. So strategies for communicating either on the phone or virtually would be using a phrase like, I can't listen as fast as you can talk. Could you please slow down for me? I think I could understand you better if you spoke a little louder or maybe softer. Did you just say the meeting is next Sunday at 7 p.m.? I'm not good at recognizing voices. Who was calling, please? Please let me turn off the TV. I'll hear you better without all that noise. Oh, that is the perfect volume or speed for me to understand you. Thank you. The masks don't help because the face is being covered, which, like I said, we try to keep things away from our face. So knowing that if you're going to be around others and you're all going to be wearing masks, that can be something where if you have a good friend, maybe you can look to them to help interpret what someone is saying, or just be honest with them. Your mask is making it hard for me to understand you. Could you say that again? Or could you rephrase it? So I know these strategies ideally are used in a time when you have full access to the person, right? You can see their face, there's no mask, you're not needing to social distance. But some of these can also be used just in conversation with the use of masks too. But that is a good point. And you are not the only one to have noticed that. The past year and a half, we've had a lot of people come in saying, I didn't think I had a hearing problem until we started using the masks, because they didn't realize just how much they were relying on those visual cues. Or you could do the next one, which is, let me repeat that back to you to make sure I heard you right. So I might have shared the story with some of you who have been in the office. But when I was little, before the use of cell phones or anything like that, my grandparents were coming over for a family barbecue, and I heard my dad tell my grandpa what time it was at. It was at noon. What time? Noon. Okay, we'll see you then. Well, noon came and went and they weren't there yet. So my family was starting to brainstorm who was going to start driving to see if they had crashed or something along the way. And they pulled in the driveway at 1:45 because my grandpa thought my dad said 2, not noon. So that's where repeating it back can help, or having the person rephrase it. So if my dad had said it starts at 12 o'clock, there would have been a lot less stress during that day. So some of these strategies that you can use for the phone, you can also use in person if you're both masked. I hope that helped. All right. Now, again, this past 18 months has been kind of weird. So maybe you haven't been to a restaurant recently, maybe you have, but I do know that restaurants are a common environment where a lot of communication breakdown can happen. I know I've experienced it. I'm sure you've experienced it. So this is a sample blueprint of what a restaurant can look like, where the tables are, things like that. So I just want you to take a moment and just kind of look, and where would you sit? Like if you were just walking into a restaurant and you had your pick of the tables, which table would you sit at? Now, ideally, you want to avoid sitting at a table that's in the middle of the restaurant. The reason being because then you're going to be in the center of all that noise, especially if all the other tables are filled. So you are going to be hearing everything coming at you. Try, if you can, I know it's not always possible, but sitting at a table around the edge can help. More specifically, sitting at a chair that's turned away from as much of the noise as possible. So you would want to sit with your back to a majority of the restaurant to help reduce some of that background noise. Now, if you're wearing hearing technology, there's a reason for that. It's because your hearing aids will focus on what's in front of you rather than focusing on what's behind you. So it kind of going along with, if you can see it, you're going to hear it. So try to sit with your back to the noise as much as possible. I know it's not always doable, but it can help take the edge off of some of that noise that's coming in at you. And I don't have these tables marked, but if you look along the left-hand side, I think these are supposed to be booth tables. So sitting at a table that has a high booth, that can also help to act as a natural noise barrier too. Okay. Another tip is to go at off times when it's less likely to be busy. So less people in the restaurant, less noise, and try to sit where there's good lighting so you can see everybody's face pretty well. All right, now I know that the holidays are right around the corner. Seems to have snuck up on me this year. But looking ahead at some of the events coming up, are there any events where you are anticipating a communication breakdown, or where you might not be able to hear someone so well? If so, think about what you can do to control the environment. So are you able to pick the location or the time? Again, going at off times can make it easier because it'll be less busy. Or if you know that one restaurant is a little quieter than another, or, think about letting someone know that if you're having a hard time hearing, you're going to let them know, and they can either help to repair some of those strategies, or maybe you can work together to practice on using some of those phrases. So that way you can participate in the conversation and not feel like you're on the outside just looking in. It's always nice to have someone that you can practice with. Okay. So with that, are there any other questions? And as I let you ponder that, I will stop sharing my screen. Okay. Well, if no one has any questions, I guess that's it. So thank you for joining me today. I'll hang around in case anyone has any other questions, but otherwise, I hope everyone has a nice day. Thanks.